Aloha and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to discuss the filming locations that were used in episode 9. The title is Missing in Action and it aired on February 5th, 1981. And wow, this one was a challenge. This is a very busy episode with dozens and dozens of filming locations in it. This one took a lot of extra time, and I had to do a lot of research to get this one sorted out. But I think I've done it. So without further delay, let's get started. So this episode, it begins with this shot along Waikiki Beach here. But before we dive into this, here's an overview of the island. And with the exception of the Anderson Estate and just one driving shot, this entire episode was filmed down in Honolulu and Waikiki. But back to this frame of this opening scene here, we get a shot of traffic flowing along Kalakaua Avenue here, and we hear a conversation between two individuals who are presumably in one of these cars. They're on their way to take this kind of cloak and dagger phone call from an individual who they refer to as a Delta agent. And I'll drop down and show you where this is at. Right here, very, very famous section of Waikiki. But what's interesting about this footage is this is recycled footage from Never Again, Never Again. And this is Dr. Kessler's green BMW here. But from here, we get this shot. We get a shot of this yellow sedan pulling onto Nu'uanu Avenue. And it pulls up to the curb and parks right there. And we'll go to that location now. Drop down and match this scene up. And that sedan, that yellow sedan, would be about right where that black truck is. And it turns and it parks right here. We'll take a look at that. And then this individual gets out of the vehicle. His name is John Newton. And he makes his way over to a phone booth, a prop phone booth that they set up right here, and awaits a phone call, which comes, and he answers the phone. And on the other line, it is this individual who's watching him from this window right here inside the McLean Block building. This is Eric Tobin, and he's the one they were referencing as they were driving to this location. He's the Delta agent, and he's requested a meeting with someone with the code name of Delta 1, and he's asked Newton here to facilitate that meeting. However, Newton states that he doesn't know the identity of Delta 1 and that he wants Tobin just to come and meet with him and he'll debrief him. However, Tobin states that the only person that's going to debrief him is Delta 1. Next, we arrive at the episode's title screen, and this was taken from the Hilton Rainbow Tower, looking down on the beach here. It looks a little different today. There used to be this dining pavilion area, and there's a swimming pool there today. But I was able to locate this photo. This is an advertisement from the period, and you can see where today the pool is located. There was that dining patio area right there. And from here, we go to our next location, which was here at the Elks Lodge. And Tom, he is right inside this area here. And he looks over and he notices someone singing and playing a piano. And we can drop down and kind of match this up. So in this shot, this is Laura Frazier. This piano would have been right here, right where this table and umbrella is located. And Tom, he looks over and he asks Moki, "Who's that?" And Moki tells Tom that it's Laura, that Rick had just hired her that day to start performing in the club. And real quick, in this frame, in this scene here, something that caught my eye, back behind Moki at the bar, that's Julia Nixon back there, just playing an extra in this episode. Further along in Magnum, she's featured in a few different episodes, but kind of her big break was in 1985 in Rambo: First Blood Part 2. I just thought that was interesting. But Tom, he makes his way over to about here, and he's watching Laura, sing and play the piano. And while she's doing so, all of a sudden she kind of spaces out, and she begins to have this vision of this individual, and he's falling off of something. And Tom, he realizes that something's not right here, and he takes her to Rick's office, which will take us to our next location, which is the Hawaii Film Studio. This was the episode where they stopped filming inside the office at the Elks Lodge, and they recreated Rick's office inside the 5-0 stage here. And in this scene, just prior to Laura waking up on Rick's couch, she called out for Eric. And then she wakes up to find Tom there, and he offers to get her a doctor, which she declines. She says she just got a little bit faint. And then he asks about Eric, and you can tell she doesn't want to talk about it. Says, "Oh, it's nothing." Rick comes in to check on her, and again, she says she's fine. Says she just hadn't been eating well and just got a little bit faint. Tom, he offers to take her back to the estate for dinner and a swim, and that will take us to our next filming location at the estate. We'll pop in there, and in this frame, we see them driving up to the main house, and they park right in there and get out of the car. Laura says that this place is beautiful, and Tom says, it has its drawbacks. And there they are. Higgins steps outside, and he meets Laura. She tells him that they're going to go for a swim and have dinner. And that will take us to our next location, the estate tidal pool. And we'll go ahead and drop down, kind of match this up. And in this scene, we see Tom come out of the tidal pool and meet up with Laura. Good shot of Rabbit Island back there. And they go sit on the beach over here. And Laura, she starts to open up about this Eric person. She tells Tom that she grew up with Eric in Missouri and that they were actually engaged to be married. However, before they could get married, he joined the Marine Corps and was shipped off to Vietnam and was MIA and believed to be dead. However, she tells Tom that she doesn't believe it, and that she had started to have these visions of Eric and believed that he was in Honolulu because that was kind of the last place that she saw him prior to him shipping off to Vietnam. And she tells Tom that she can't get any help from the Marine Corps because they weren't actually married. And Tom, he offers his services and, says that he can probably help her out. And then they finish out this scene with a swim in the tidal pool. Next, we get a shot of Tom driving to Pearl Harbor the next morning. And we see him here driving on Highway 61. And then the camera kind of follows the Ferrari along the freeway. And I'll match up this frame here. Let's see here. So that house is right there. So in this shot, the Ferrari would have been about right there as he makes his way to Pearl. And in this next frame, we see him pulling up to one of the gates at Pearl Harbor. However, this is not Pearl Harbor. This was filmed at the Honolulu International Airport at ARF Fire Station number 2. And that's the station right there. And it looks different today. There's an additional garage here for the fire trucks. But back in 80, 81, it was just this building here. And we'll see Tom. He's driving along this road right here. And he pulls up to this gate right there. Up to the gate. Yep, you can see. Looks like it was tan back then as well. It's blue today. Pulls up to the gate. And we'll drop down and try and match this up a bit. Something like that. Tom would have been right there. And then the guard waves him through. And he turns over here and parks somewhere over here. Which will lead us to our first unidentified location. And I'm afraid that without a call sheet or some insight from someone who was actually here when they filmed this is going to be pretty tough to ever find. But you never know. They make their way across this big computer room here into a hallway. And this is also the first time that we ever meet Lieutenant Mac Reynolds, or Mac. He was in the pilot of Magnum, but he played a different character. He played Ski in that episode. But Magnum, he kind of cons him into assisting him in finding out Eric Tobin's status. And they go into Mac's office and they do just kind of a basic search on Eric Tobin. And then Magnum, he kind of presses for a more in-depth search into his files. And this Delta block, or this security block from this Delta section group pops up. And they're both kind of confused and not understanding why there would be a Delta block on this Marine that was MIA. And that freaks Mac out. And he tells Magnum that you didn't see anything and you get out of here and don't come back. Next, we get this establishing shot down on Waikiki Beach, which I have screen matched. Got this main shower area here, and that same shower is right there. And this is, I'm certain that this is also recycled footage from episode 3, China Doll. But following this establishing shot, we see Tom and Laura walking along a beach. And we'll go ahead and we'll make our way over to that location. Just down the beach a bit at the Hilton Hawaiian Village area. And it looks like there's a whole lot more grass there today than there was back in 1980 when they shot this. But they're kind of making their way along the beach this way towards this general area. And as they're doing so, Tom, he tells Laura that he believes that Eric is a member of this Delta section, and explains to her that, it's this secretive unit that specializes in sabotage and assassinations, and she's having a hard time believing that, he could be involved in something like that. But, Tom, he assures her that, Delta section, they don't make mistakes. And, there was a Delta block on his file. And he believes that there's only, one of two reasons for that. Either Delta section wants everyone to think he's dead, or they don't want people to know how he died. And she's certain that he is not dead and that he is in Honolulu, which he is. And then they turn around and they see all these service members saying goodbye to loved ones at this location, and they both kind of reminisce about doing the same thing at this, very, very location. From there, we get a shot of Newton in his office, and this filming location was also inside of the McLean building here on New Anu Avenue. However, I'll go a little further in depth into this location later on in this video. But we see Newton, he receives a phone call from someone who's caught wind that there's someone named Magnum and Laura Frazier in Honolulu searching for Eric Tobin, and that gets his attention. He hangs up the phone and pulls out this for rent sign, sticks it in the window, which is obviously some form of tradecraft. This for rent sign is a trigger for something, which we'll get to a little later in this episode. Next, we get this establishing shot at the estate, which leads us to the estate guest house, where we see Tom and Higgins inside of Higgins' den here. And Tom, he's asking Higgins to place Laura under hypnosis in an effort to gain some insight or a possible clue from these visions that Laura's been having. And Higgins, he agrees to do so under one condition. He tells Tom that the Ferrari is overdue for servicing, and he wants him to have the car tuned up. And Magnum, he agrees to those terms, and then he sits there for a minute and he asks Higgins, how much does a Ferrari tune-up cost? And then Higgins, he just smiles and walks out of the den. From there, we see them in the estate guest house, and Higgins, he's attempting to place Laura under hypnosis, tells her to look into the crystal, and it works. She starts to see the visions. However, it's just the same visions that she's been seeing over and over, and she kind of starts to freak out a little bit. And Higgins, he's forced to pull her out of hypnosis. Next, we get this famous scene where Tom, he's asking TC to perform the tune-up on the Ferrari so that he can save some money. And TC says, I don't know if I can do this. Magnum tells him, you'll do fine. And this entire scene here, it was filmed at the Honolulu International Airport in this general location here. Unfortunately, it's been redeveloped, and it is now a United Airlines cargo facility. There used to be two general aviation hangars here and here-ish. I was able to find a historical photo that was taken not long after this scene was shot. If I pull that photo up, this is that same area. And today, that United Airlines cargo facility is right here. But in this scene, back to this scene, this hangar right here is this hangar here. And they would have been just right there on the corner of that hangar. And TC, he agrees to attempt the tune-up, gets in there and works his magic, and he gets it running pretty good, which makes Magnum pretty happy because it just saved him a lot of money. And TC's pretty proud of himself. And then that's where we get this famous Abbott and Costello routine. What do you mean you loan me 10? You owe me 50. And in the background here, you can see back here, this is the G concourse at the Honolulu International Airport. If I back out here, so yeah, they would have been right there. And then in the distance, you can see that G concourse here. And let me go back to Google Earth here. So again, they're in this general area here. And if I pull this up, there's the G concourse today. And you can see on top of the concourse, you can see these. I'm guessing these are AC unit covers. Right there, 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 and there. And those are there, all through there. But after this, after the Abbott and Costello routine, Tom, he speeds off along the ramp here, right through here. And we'll take a look at that. And in fact, I can go down and I can match up these mountains here. So yeah, off in the distance, you can see that mountain range there. It's right there. We then get this scene. This is a shot of Newton's office. You can see that for rent sign that he placed in the window earlier in the episode. And then we immediately get this shot of Eric Tobin at a payphone. And he calls into Newton's office. And he says, "I saw the for rent sign. What do you need?" And this scene was also shot at the Honolulu International Airport, not far from the previous scene, which was here. This scene was filmed right here. And I will drop down and match this one up. So it was filmed approximately right in here. They just placed the prop phone booth somewhere in here. And Newton, he tells Eric that Laura's in town working at the King Kamehameha Club, and she's searching for him. He also tells Eric that Magnum is a Delta agent because he doesn't want Eric talking to Magnum. So if he believes that Magnum is with Delta Section, he'll avoid him like the plague. Next, we see that Tom has arrived back at the King Kamehameha Club. However, by the time he gets there, the Ferrari is running like an old wash tub. He hops out, tells the valet here, "Don't ever give work to your friends." And then he heads inside, up to the bar here, to Moki. And Moki tells him that he's got a visitor upstairs on the terrace, and that Rick believes it's probably government heat. So Magnum, he heads up there, And in this scene, they are sitting approximately right there, up here on the terrace. And Newton provides some sort of credential. However, Magnum, he knows. He sits down immediately and he says, "You're with Delta Section, aren't you?" And Newton admits that he is. And he says, "I understand you're looking for someone named Eric Tobin and that you're working for Laura Frazier." And Magnum asks him, "Well, why do you want to know?" And Newton won't provide any information. And Magnum tells him, "Look, I know Eric's alive. I know he's here in Honolulu. You know, tell me what's going on." And Newton still won't provide any information. And they get up and they walk over, about right there. Continue their conversation. Newton, he won't provide any information. So Magnum does the same, tells him to suck an egg. He's not going to give him any information about Laura or Eric Tobin. And Newton, he says, "Well, if you change your mind, here's my number." Gives him his card. And he leaves the terrace right along this area here. And Magnum follows. However, on his way out, he can't help himself. Higgins is in the middle of a meeting here, and he taps him on the shoulder and says, "How you doing, Higgins?" Which thoroughly annoys Higgins, but Magnum couldn't resist. We then see Magnum in this hallway here, walking up to Laura Frazier's room. Now, this wasn't filmed in the Elks Lodge. This was a set back at the soundstage. And Tom, again, he approaches her room, and we get this shot of Laura in her room. She's kind of starting to space out again, and she starts to have this vision. However, this time it's a little bit different. And she gets up, races to the door, and she tells Magnum that she sees Eric and that he's somewhere close. And they start to head back out into the club, which will lead us back to the Elks Lodge or King Kamehameha Club. And then we get a shot of Eric, and he's at the club. And I'll drop down and match this next scene up. So in this scene, Eric, he's standing approximately here, leaning up against this railing. And again, we're back at the Elks Lodge. Laura looks out, and she sees Eric, and he sees her, but he also sees Magnum with her, and he believes that Magnum is a Delta agent. So he quickly turns and he hops over the railing here, jumps down to the beach, and Magnum takes off after him. And Magnum also climbs over the railing there. And then we get this funny scene where Higgins comes up and starts screaming that this is outrageous. Next, we see them running down the beach. However, it's no longer here. It is at a different location. They are further down the beach here. And I'll drop down to this area. So in this scene, they're running down the beach here. You see Magnum chasing Tobin there. Tobin knows he can't get away, so he turns and he starts firing on Magnum. And you can see right here, this is the Queen's Walkway jetty. And Tobin, he would have been right here somewhere as he fires. And Magnum dives down, tells everyone else to stay down. and then he just lets Tobin get away. Kind of match this up a little bit, something like that. Next, we get this establishing shot, and this was filmed on Kahala Beach. And what's interesting about this footage is they pulled this footage from an episode of Magnum that had not aired yet. This is actually footage from episode 11, The Curse of the King Kamehameha Club. And I'll kind of match this up for you. So this stretch of beach here is approximately right there. And we'll dive into this a little deeper in a few episodes. But from here, we go to the King Kamehameha Club, where the parking valet tells Magnum that Eric had been driving a black Mustang that was parked out front, and that in this scene, that Mustang is parked right here in that stall, and they make their way out there. Magnum searches the Mustang. The car's been sanitized. However, he finds a parking lot claim check from that very day that got left behind. And this will lead us to our next filming location, which was here on Smith Street. And I'll drop down and match this up. In this frame here, Tom and the parking lot attendant, they're standing about right here. And he says he does remember Eric and knows where he's staying. However, Tom, he has to pay him $20 for the information. And this shot, you can see this building here with its awning. God, looks like that awning hasn't changed at all. But he points up to these rooms here as to where Eric is staying. Those rooms there. However, we know that's not where he was staying. And I'll pop up and we'll take a look at where he was staying. As we've deduced earlier in this episode, he was staying in the McLean Block building right here on New Avenue in one of these rooms here. And there's a catwalk on the back side of this building that runs kind of full length along the building. And in this next frame, that's what we see Tom stepping out onto. And we'll pop back there. And it's tough. Yeah, this is that catwalk. However, there aren't many great street view options down in here. And the best one that I have is down here on Bethel Street. Let's see, let's slide over just a bit. There we go. Now, here we can see that catwalk on the back side of the building. There's somebody standing on it right there. And that's what Tom is stepping out onto over here somewhere. And he makes his way along the catwalk, checking doors, trying to find out where Eric's room is. And he's not messing around this time. He's got his .45 tucked inside this newspaper. Makes his way down somewhere around this area, and then he turns around and starts to head back. And we get a shot of Eric in his room here, shaving. And you may recognize this room. It was used in, I think, Heaven for Little Girls and Big Ones too. And this was Lucky's gym in that episode. Tom, he makes his way back that way. And as he's doing so, Eric spots his silhouette as he crosses in front of his door, grabs his pistol, and he chambers around, which Tom hears, and he jumps out of the way of the door before Eric can start firing. And then Magnum, he kicks the door open, returns fire, dives into the room. However, Eric, he runs out the other door, and he starts to run down the catwalk towards these stairs so that he can escape. And we get a shot of that right there. He's probably in this frame, standing right exactly where this person is in this street view. But Magnum, he chases him, and Eric, he stops right here on this landing, and he fires at Tom. Looks like there used to be a cinder block wall wrapping around this portion of those stairs back in 1980. And then he turns and he runs down the stairs through an alleyway to Nu'uanu Avenue. Take a look at that here. And Tom chases him. However, before he can get to Eric, Eric's able to run down Nu'uanu Avenue and round this corner here, and he escapes. And we'll pop over there and take a peek at this. So right here, this is the alleyway that he ran out of. And then he runs down along this sidewalk and he rounds that corner right there. This building did not exist back in 1980 when they shot this. And then we see Tom. He emerges from the alleyway onto the sidewalk, and he doesn't know which way Eric went. And he looks around, and this I can actually screen match where his arm is. So these blocks on the front of the building, you see this little notch right here, and that right there is that same little notch that Tom's arm is up against. And as Tom scans the street, we get this shot, which is not Nu'uanu Avenue. This is the Queen Theater. This is actually footage that they recycled from Never Again, Never Again. And I've screen matched this location. But from there, we see Tom entering back into Eric's room again, which I believe was this room here. And he goes over to his bed and he starts to search his bag, his belongings. And he finds a letter that Eric had written to the Washington Post that was to be mailed to the Post in the event of his death. Tom, he sits down and he reads it, and he finds out that Eric was a member of a 4-man Delta Section rescue team that was in Africa. And while there, they had their cover blown, and the rest of the team, they were killed. However, the only person that knew of this team's existence was this person with the code name of Delta One. And that is why Eric is, trying to set up this meeting with this Delta One person, so that he can, get some revenge for what happened in Africa. Next, we get a quick driving scene. We see Tom driving along Diamond Head Road here, next to the lighthouse, which has not changed much at all. And from there, we see him back at the club. We'll go there. And He pulls up again to the valet, and the car is just still running like garbage, and he's disgusted. He just gets out, doesn't say anything, and walks into the club. Goes up to Rick, asks where Laura is at, and he says she's in a room. He wouldn't let her sing, and he gives Rick that phone number that Newton had given him, and he asks Rick to find the address that goes with this phone number. And Rick takes a look at it, and then Tom, he heads back to Laura's room, which again was not at the actual Elks Lodge here or Kinkamehameha Club. This was a set back at the Hawaii Film Studio here. And he knocks on the door, opens it, and he sees Laura on the couch there. And he says, Eric was here again, wasn't he? And she's upset. She says that, yeah, he was there, and that he told her to stop looking for him and to go home. And she says, Tom, it's over. Just forget it. And Tom tells her, I don't think they're going to let us. Next, we see Tom and Laura driving back to the estate here on the Kalanianiole Highway, and they turn in to the front gate to find Newton and his partner waiting for them, standing approximately right there. And Newton tells Tom that they're taking Laura into protective custody. And Tom gets out, and Newton says, I have a warrant. And Tom says, well, let me see it. And whack. Knocks Tom out, and they take Laura. Next, we get this shot. We see Tom in the Audi driving along Diamond Head Road here. And this is also recycled footage from Thank Heaven for Little Girls and Big Ones too. We see that he's in his Navy uniform. He's got his hair matted down, and I guess in an effort to make it look shorter, because he is arriving back at that Pearl Harbor Navy intelligence facility, which we've established is the one of the R fire stations at the Honolulu International Airport. And I'll drop back down and match this up. So again, this building did not exist back in 1980 when they shot this episode. But he's able to bluff his way back onto the base, turns along this way, and then we arrive again at the biggest mystery of this episode, the interior of this Navy intelligence facility. If you know where this was shot, please comment below. But Tom, he makes his way over to a file cabinet. He's going to break in. He's got his lockpick set there. He's going to break into this cabinet and get the Delta Section personnel codes. But when he goes to do so, he finds that the file cabinet is unlocked, and he just pulls them out of the cabinet, and he heads into Mac's office, jumps on the computer, and then Mac comes in and busts him. Tells him, you can't do that. And he starts to go and call base security. And Magnum stops him and tells him that, hey, it's regarding this Eric Tobin. He's alive. He's in Honolulu. He's a Delta agent. And he's in Honolulu looking for this Delta One individual. And he's going to kill him. And Magnum, he wants access to Mac's computer so he can figure out who this Delta One person is, so he can stop all this. And Mac agrees to help him out. They gain access to the Delta section personnel files, and they're able to kind of deduce that John Newton is Delta 1 based on his service dates and his Delta section code number. They come to the realization that Newton is in fact Delta 1. From there, we get this shot. We see Newton has the sign in the window again, and this window, it was one of these windows here, but we'll get to this in just a few minutes. He's in his office. He's waiting for the phone call, which comes. Tobin calls in, and in this scene, this phone booth right here was literally right across the street from Newton's office. Right here. And something I noticed that I think is crazy is 1980, when they shot this, there was the plate displayed in the window here. And fast forward to today, and what's in the window? There's a plate displayed there. Kind of crazy. But yeah, phone booth was right here. And if you look at this pipe here, I dare say that that is, in fact, the exact same pipe that was there back in 1980. But he calls up and asks Newton what he wants. And Newton tells him that he was able to secure a meeting with Delta One. And he says Eric can name the place of the meeting. And Eric tells them to meet him at the abandoned barge across from the reef runway at 8 o'clock. Next, we get a real quick shot of Tom back at the club, walking past the bar, and he asks Smokey if Rick's in his office. And in this shot here, he's just inside the building right here, walking this way towards Rick's office, where we will head to now. Back at the 5-0 stage, walks into the office, and this is where I realized they were shooting in the studio and no longer shooting at the actual Elks Lodge. Just for a split second, the camera operator pulls back a little too far, and you can actually see that there's a false ceiling there. There's just this one little panel here, and you can see up into the stage. But Tom, he goes up to Rick and asks if he was able to get that address that went along with Newton's phone number. And Rick, he had it, gives it to him, and then he asks TC if he can borrow his van, and TC realizes that something major is going on, so he lets Magnum borrow the van. Next, we get this shot back at Newton's office, and it's kind of a panning shot over this way. And in this frame, we can see these two windows right here and the building next door. You can make out this rain spout right here inside the building there. And then it continues to pan, and we can see the three windows here, two of which have AC units in the top of them, which are still there to this day. From here, we see that Tom is on the back side of the building. And again, this is New Uanu Avenue. This is the McLean Block building. Tom is on the back of the building, and here's that catwalk from earlier. And Newton steps inside of his office and realizes that he's in trouble. Tom disarms him and tells him to head back into his office. And as they're walking back there, for just a split second, you catch a glimpse of an AC unit, one of these AC units from the inside. They sit down, and Tom tells him to keep his hands where he can see them. And then as we look out one of these windows here, you can see the building across the street. And we get a glimpse of that window right there. This pattern was just painted on, and it's different today. And you can also make out, the corner, the edge of the building right there, which is right there. So with that information, we can surmise that Newton's office is behind one of these windows here. And when I figured this all out, I went through and I checked every single window, praying that there would be a for rent sign in one of them, but unfortunately there wasn't. But someday it's got to happen. But back to this episode here, Tom tells Newton that he knows that he's Delta 1 and that he's the one that blew the cover on this team in Africa and got most of them killed. He also informs him that he has Eric's letter to the post. And at this point, Newton, he knows he's fried, and tells Tom that if he gives him the letter, he'll take him to Laura. Then Tom says, "No, you'll take me to Laura." Which leads us to our next filming location. Back at the Honolulu International Airport. In this frame, we see Tom and Newton in TC's van driving up to this location. This road here is this road here. It's Lagoon Drive. And I'm going to drop down and match this up. Okay, so this is approximately here what we're seeing in this frame. You've got the Navy Intelligence Building there, which is actually the ARF fire station for the reef runway over here. And I'll kind of push in so you can see it a little better right there. But Tom and Newton, they pull up to Newton's partner here, who's holding Laura. And Newton tells him to put the gun down. And we'll kind of keep this matched up as we go here. And Tom steps out of the van and makes his way over to this individual and disarms him. He throws both of his firearms out into the ocean here. Sorry for the individual that had to go out there and fish those out at the end of this scene. But yeah, you can even see this little whatever that is in the background. There is right there. So Newton's car in this frame is right in here. But yeah, he throws his guns out there, tells Laura to get out of the car and come to him, which she does. And he tells Newton's partner here to get lost. And he takes off down the road here, down Lagoon Drive. And then Tom, he starts to make his way towards this this abandoned dredge and barge that were just right over here. And Laura comes over to him, and he tells her that he's gonna try and talk Eric down, try and talk him out. And he starts to make his way towards the abandoned dredge. And as he's doing so, again, at this point, Eric still thinks that Magnum is a Delta agent coming to get him. And he opened fires on Magnum, and Magnum quickly gets out of there to find some cover somewhere over here. Gets a bead on Eric, tells him to give up, and Eric pretends to. He throws his rifle down into the ocean in front of this dredge here, or this barge, and then he starts to come down the ladder. But then he pulls a pistol from his ankle and he bolts down towards the back of this dredge. And again, it would have been looking right out here somewhere. Yep, runs to the back of the dredge, and he starts to climb up the backside. And as this is happening, Newton decides this is his only opportunity to kind of save himself. So he runs over and he grabs Laura, and he saw where that rifle went in the ocean. And he reaches down and he picks it up, and then they make their way over towards this barge here. Meanwhile, Magnum, he starts to close in on Eric, who's up there quite a ways at this point, and Eric again open fires on Magnum, and he's pinned down. But while he's pinned down, Newton, he sneaks up on Eric. He pushes Laura out of the way, and she tries to warn him, but she's too late. And Newton, he shoots Eric, who falls down into the ocean and is presumably dead. And of course, these were the visions that Laura was seeing this entire, episode. And then she just unfortunately had to watch the whole thing play out live. Newton, he starts to turn his rifle towards Magnum, but Magnum shoots him. And then Magnum comes up on the barge, makes his way over to Newton. And Newton says, "You don't understand, Magnum. These Delta agents, one of them was a double agent, and I had no way of knowing who it was. So that's why I had to blow their cover in Africa." And, Magnum says, "Well, you killed 3 innocent men. And by the way, I mailed Eric's letter to the Washington Post." And Newton just lays down and ponders his fate. And then Magnum, he goes over and he tries to console Laura. And then we get this really neat shot where the camera pans out. And you got this, I think it's a C5 out there, taxiing out to depart. And I believe that's probably about right there in this frame. And you may be wondering how I found this location. And one way was the down at the end of Lagoon Drive. I could see that fire station, and that was a huge help. And then in doing a bit more research, I came across this photo here, and this is a photo of the Honolulu International Airport. This is back in '82, and again, there's the G concourse there. The ARF fire station that they have been using as the Navy Intelligence building is over here, and then that this barge and dredge are still sitting there 2 years later. Kind of crazy. And with this photo, I was really able to pinpoint its exact location. But it's kind of crazy what you can find when you go looking for it. But from here, we get this shot where we see Tom and TC driving along the Kalanianiole Highway, and they were right here, just past the blowhole parking lot here, and they're making their way towards Robin's Nest. And Tom says, "Oh, this thing runs great, TC. Why didn't you tune it like this before?" And he starts to kiss the money, and he says, "Because this time I had some motivation." And then we see them arrive at Robin's Nest here, and then we see them driving up towards the main entrance here. And Tom, he's pretty proud of how the Ferrari's running, and he does a few donuts here. And then they park, and Higgins comes out, and they're all excited, and they tell Higgins that TC performed the work. Higgins informs them that because TC's not an authorized Ferrari mechanic, that the Ferrari's warranty is now void. And he informs Magnum that he is now responsible for all future maintenance and repairs on the Ferrari. And then we get this shot. And that is a wrap on Missing in Action. The next episode that I cover in this filming location series will be Lest We Forget. Hope you've enjoyed this video as much as I did making it. If you did, please hit that like and subscribe button. And lastly, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.